Hello everybody, Sparkster1701 here. It's time for another Generation 1 Transformers review. We're going to take a look at another combiner component for a squad that I've not yet looked at for some reason after all this time. Today we've got the Aerial Bot Ground Troop Support Unit, Slingshot. Now, Slingshot, like the other aerial bots, was released in 1986. They would also be available in 1987. He would be discontinued in 1988, and we really wouldn't get a replacement for him. Slingshot here is unique amongst the aerial bots in the fact that his alternate mode is that of a hover jet, so he would be somewhat more useful out of the team, as he would not require the traditional landing strip in order to land. Plus, by being a hover jet, he can perform different tasks that are impossible for the other aerial bots. The only major problem with that is the fact that he's such a jerk. Slingshot is the type of character that loves to brag and take credit for things he had nothing to do with, and seems to think he's more important than what he really is. The More Than Meets the Eye guides go through this a little further by stating that he wants to have some control over something in his life. So, he acts like a jerk to at least have some control over how the other Autobots treat him. As you can imagine, he's not well liked by the others. And that's a shame, being one that can fly, due to the fact that they don't have that many that can fly, so he's asking for trouble and can't usually get the help he needs to get out of it. Now, for his articulation, Slingshot basically has the same as all of his other small aerial bot brethren, in the fact that you can rotate the arm all the way at the shoulder. The arm's also on a ball joint, so it can be brought all the way backward. He can fire backwards if you want to. It looks stupid, but you can do it. And that's basically it, folks, because they have no leg articulation at all. So we'll move right along and go into transforming him. First step, of course, is to remove his gun. We fold his arms down at the sides like so, and squeeze his legs down like that. Then we will fold out his wings. Then we turn him over. We fold the tail section back and fold the nose down over his head. And here he is in his jet mode. Specifically, Slingshot becomes a Harrier type jet, which, as stated earlier, is a hover jet, so it would allow him to hover over areas and thus allow him to help support ground troops, as he can stay steady enough to fire his missiles and whatnot at other ground troops. Unfortunately, that hasn't helped carry over in much of the lore, as a lot of the newer versions of Superion have dropped Slingshot in favor of a helicopter, as the card game uses Alpha Bravo, an attack helicopter, in the place of Slingshot. So in many ways, he's probably gotten what he deserves for being a jerk. But play value wise, he still retains it here in his jet mode, since he does swoosh pretty good. Especially if you're holding him by the tail. I would not recommend it by the wings, especially as they get older. As these toys get older, the wings will not necessarily stay in position with a lot of weight attached to them. So definitely hold him by the tail, and you can get some good swooshing action here. Now for his loose parts, like his small aerial bot friends, he only has one. That would be his gun, which the instructions describe as a neutron rifle. It has a pretty long barrel on it and a very thin clip, so it will only go on a guy that has thin arms, and Slingshot is the only small aerial bot to have thin arms, so he can't interchange his gun with somebody else's. Since all the little aerial bots mount their guns on their arms, they don't hold them in their hands. So bear that in mind when you're looking for a loose version. Of course, before we go and show off the card, I want to point out that there will be a variation on Slingshot here and many of the other figures that were released in 1986, as during that year Hasbro was in the process of changing a lot of the materials that they made their toys with. So certain ones would have parts of their bodies made out of different material. Slingshot here is no exception. This red piece here on his chest, this can either be made of metal or plastic. Metal ones, of course, would be the early 1986 ones. Plastic ones would be ones from later on in 1986 at the earliest. Of course, part of the reason I can tell this is some of the paint has chipped from many of our numerous adventures as children. But that helps determine this is cold metal. So this would be a first edition Slingshot, and despite the paint wear, he's not too bad for over 30 years old. At any rate, let's take a look at his card. The card here is in very good shape for its age. Got a rather wicked looking picture of him here on the front. It would just be nice if the toy posed like that. And of course it's got a price sticker here. He was retailing for about $4. This may be one of the later ones. On the back side, it's got his robot points. It shows that he was worth half a point, and like I mentioned last week, that's a bit of a change, since the year prior the Constructicons were worth a full point, so why they downgraded them to half a point is beyond me, except to basically cheat us out of mail-aways. But of course, we of the Transformer collectors, we were getting cheated. We weren't getting anywhere near the offers that G.I. Joes were getting. Up here at the top, shows off all the other aerial bots. Of course, thing to point out, 4 of them here, the 4 small guys, are fighter jets. And the thing I never got over was the fact their leader, Silverbolt, is a passenger jet. How in the world does that work? At any rate, we've got a nice little line drawing here of Slingshot and contents showing that it came with just him and his gun and a set of stickers. It shows how to transform the Harrier into Slingshot, how to put the stickers on, and then 3 reminders: collect your robot points, find the rub sign, and how to read the tech spec. So down here at the bottom we have his tech spec. We'll take a look at it here. It's all done up in red to show he's an Autobot and lists him as an aerial bot, and as a smaller version of the picture found on the front of the card. It gives his name as Slingshot. His function is ground troop support, and his motto is, "I'm even better than I think." He won't ever win a Mr. Popularity contest. Incessant braggart, takes credit for exploits of other Autobots. Optimus Prime is supportive since he's hard-working and loyal, but he secretly lacks self-confidence. Vertical takeoff and landing aircraft. Flies at Mach 1.6, range 800 miles, extremely maneuverable. Sharpshooter. Has twin mortar cannons as jet, neutron rifle as robot. With fellow aerial bots, forms Superion. So he does have some use to the Autobots by being a good marksman as well as somebody that can fly. He just tends to open his mouth more than he needs to. Anyway, we'll lay the decoder here over the grid. It shows that his strength is 6. His intelligence is also 6. His speed is 8. His endurance is 4. His rank is 5. His courage is 8. His firepower is also 8. And his skill is 9. So, aside from some low endurance, Slingshot here is a rather powerful warrior. So now we get down to my thoughts. What do I think of Slingshot? Slingshot is at best a middle tier character. A lot of the things that keep him from being a top tier character is the fact that he is too much of a braggart. Since he lacks self-confidence, he's got to take charge of making people hate him instead of trying to go out of his way to earn some of their support. Unfortunately, that's a lesson that will be totally lost on Slingshot, and not worth much discussion here either. Otherwise, the toy itself, it isn't too bad. Most people have criticized the orange face over the years, but I've never really seen that as much of a problem, per se. The articulation, that could be better. That much I'll give to anybody, because the aerial bots really have some poor articulation, but it is better than some of the others that the toy line has, as they can at least move their arms a little bit more than a lot of the others. And you top it off with the fact that his vehicle mode is rather useful to the Autobot army, as not only can it fly through the air, it's a hover jet, so it can help act as an extra ground support unit. A function that would only be really helped out with by only a few other members of the team. As let's face it, Power Glide's A10 mode would be also effective for fighting ground troops. And then you'd have the helicopters that would have been available around then. Whirl, Blades, and Springer. But let's face it, Whirl was released the year prior, and Springer had just come out as well. But they would be more expensive toys, whereas he was a toy that was under $10. Slingshot here would be one of them that would be more picked up due to that. And I think he deserves a little bit of credit for that much at least. So we'll give him that much and hope that gives him a nice confidence boost that, all in all, he does have a good use for the Autobots. And is somebody that can be counted upon to bring his blaster into bear. Now, if only he'd make himself less of a target for them to want to shoot, then maybe he'd do better. Anyway, that concludes my review of the Autobot Ground Troop Support Unit Slingshot. If you like this video, please drop me a thumbs up here on YouTube. New to the channel, please hit the subscribe button down below and join our ranks. Also, ring the notification bell so you'll be alerted when I post new content. Also, please consider sharing your thoughts about Slingshot in the comments down below. This is Sparkster1701 saying I will catch you all later.